what makes someone remarkable? Do you mind being described as the white people whisperer? What is the optimal age to get married?
That year was the first year that we ever heard a teacher talk about race.
Is the college application process fair?
You start to find the non-obvious way kind of works.
Is there like a cartoonist community? So many times when we go live with these things, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom.
Boom.
Welcome back. Now we are off mute officially, which is going to be much better for our first show of 2021. And I am so excited about the show today because we are talking about one of my favorite events of the year, which is actually going virtual this year, which is CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, the world's largest trade show. And we have with us a fantastic guest, Steve Koenig, the VP of Research at the Consumer Technology Association. We're going to talk about some of the big plans for CES this year. But before we do that, we need to talk about some non-obvious stories of the week. And wow, it has been quite a 24 hours here in DC, in the DC area, as people around the world have been watching and asking about the chaos going into the US Capitol and people storming in and votes and just like the usual, I suppose, sadly, we should say, the usual chaos of all of these things going, and perhaps a little bit unusual too. And so I don't tend to focus too much on those things, but I think what's been fascinating about watching some of the news and everything come out is just how much it's sort of shifting the perception of people who previously were super loyal, were super thinking in one direction, and now it's sort of given them cover to maybe shift a little bit. Twitter and Facebook have presented blocks. It's just been like a crazy, crazy time. So anyway, those are not, that particular story is not part of the non-obvious stories of the week because we have a bunch of other stories to talk about and we've got a great topic for the show this week. And the first story I'd like to share with you is about something that many of you know called the Turing test. And the Turing test is a test used to basically measure whether AI is getting to a sophisticated enough level to be mistaken for humans. It's a test that was proposed by a writer a long time ago, Alan Turing. It's about 70 years ago, actually, to this year. So a 70-year anniversary. And this article that I read in Fast Company this week talked about how maybe that's not the test we should use anymore. And it was a really interesting point because essentially what it said is maybe we don't want AI to be just like humans. Maybe we don't want it to be indistinguishable from humans. Instead, maybe we actually want it to be responsive and useful and behave like a machine in some ways. And I just thought this was like an interesting challenging of the perception that we always think, which is, oh, we want these machines to be as human-like as possible. Well, maybe not. Like maybe that's not the ultimate thing that we could. That article talked about that in a really interesting way. Another one that captured the attention of my time and caused a little bit of disappointment for me, I got to say, this week, was the Ratatouille musical, the Ratatouille TikTok musical, which was cleverly tagged as the Ratatouille. And I was really excited about this because I love this animated movie and I was going to watch these live performers come up with these songs for the Ratatouille musical, but I missed my chance. See, it turns out you had to get a ticket for this virtual show and you had to be there actually on time. There's no on-demand streaming for this. And I thought in the moment, I'm like, oh, I'm so disappointed that I missed it. But as I thought about it further, I thought, yeah, that's actually pretty clever because it really does relay that this was a once in a lifetime experience, kind of like something that would be live in person. And in this world where everything can be streamed afterwards, to try and retrain people to think in that way, to say, oh, I got to show up at this time, otherwise I won't ever be able to experience this thing again. Like it just seemed like that was a kind of a clever way to do it. Now, I'm bummed that I missed it this time, but I definitely learned my lesson. So now when future performances come, I'm going to check and make sure that it isn't that once in a lifetime thing, because if it is, I'm going to make time if it's really important to me and show up, especially if it's Ratatouille. I mean, that's just too good to miss. So hopefully they kind of shift it around and go back. But even if they don't, I think it's just an interesting way to think about experiences and how maybe we need to show up to them in the future. Another big story this week was all about hiring without resumes. And it's a movement called open hiring. And there's a bakery called the Grayson Bakery that essentially uses this open hiring where they ask a series of questions. And the Body Shop has been doing that as well, the retail store, the Body Shop, where they essentially ask a couple of questions. Are you legally able to work? Can you stand on your feet for 8 hours a day? And can you lift 50 pounds? And based on that, they hire people and then they train them. And this whole idea of open hiring was such a beautiful one because it allows organizations for many of these kind of short-term gigs or these kind of part-time workers types of positions to be more inclusive with who they end up hiring. And instead of putting these barriers of you have to have a resume, you have to do the same format and the same thing. And it's just a different way of thinking about who to hire and how to get them involved. Last story I want to share with you is one that had just a brilliant title to pique your curiosity. It was all about Mark Zuckerberg's lost notebook. Some of you might have seen this in Wired magazine this week. And Zuck's Lost Notebook is essentially a long form article about going inside the mind of Mark Zuckerberg. And I know there's been a ton of books about this and a ton of coverage about this. But what's interesting about Mark Zuckerberg's head and what came through loud and clear in this article is he believes he's right. And so much so that he's not going to change his mind. And it struck me that for someone who has as much power and control over the world in many ways that he does, there's no way we can remove him. And so somebody like that who's just going to think what they think and not change their mind ever is kind of a dangerous thing. And that was my kind of remaining thought as I listened to some of the feedback on this, and I also read this article. So anyway, that just caused me a little bit of concern, and I thought, wow, maybe we need to think about this with a little bit of gravity. Every week, I also pick a book. Wow, that's hard to say. I pick a book of the week, and this week's choice is a book by an author named Tom Vanderbilt, and it's called Beginnings. And it's perfectly timed for the beginning of the year, and I love a good, well-timed book launch, I gotta say. And this one is all about the joy of being a lifelong learner, of being a beginner at various things. And so a great book, highly recommend it. Every week I share a new book recommendation with you as part of the show. Now, it is time for our featured guest of the week, and I am excited once more to bring on the VP of Research at the Consumer Technology Association, Steve Koenig. Steve, are you there?
I'm here, and I know it's
All right.
the Non-Obvious Insights show, but I am obviously super excited to be with you today. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. This is a very big moment. It's just a few days before the start of CES. I'm amazed that we were able to get you for just a small window of time, because I know it must be a total chaotic thing for you. And I think for people who aren't familiar with CES and the phenomenon that is CES, the Consumer Electronics Show is the world's largest trade show. Every year, it brings in January more than 100,000 people to Las Vegas. It is a total chaotic, beautiful, organized chaos. And I have been more than 10 times. I love the show. It is a fantastic gathering of people. And this year, because of the pandemic, for the first time ever, the entire show is going virtual. So that's what we're going to talk about, what to expect at CES next week and the thinking behind it. So, I mean, maybe let's jump in there. Take us inside that moment, that conversation when you made that announcement. I think it's been maybe 4 or 5 months ago that you announced that CES was going to be virtual. So it wasn't like a last minute thing. I mean, you certainly thought about this.
Well, we certainly did. And in fact, I mean, really at the headwaters of the crisis back in that February, March timeframe, we started planning for the contingency of an all digital CES. And that paid dividends down the line, obviously, because we undertook the decision midsummer 2020 to just basically go 100% digital with CES 2021. Why? Well, because it was obvious at that time that there's no way that we could safely convene the global tech community in Las Vegas, no matter what we did. And also just with travel restrictions still in place and so forth. And that's when we leaned in and engaged our partner Microsoft. And we acknowledged that there was no way that we could just completely replicate the magic and serendipity of CES in Las Vegas. So we didn't try to do that. We threw out the playbook, and instead of trying to recreate CES in an all digital format, we reimagined it. And really, I think what attendees will see starting next week on Monday the 11th is really a platform that captures the uniqueness of CES, which is to say innovation and that spirit, and is also a very robust platform for the global tech community to convene, connect, collaborate. It's going to be like nothing anyone has ever seen. This platform is experiential. There are robust networking tools. It's going to be phenomenal. It all starts next week.
It's interesting that you mentioned the bigness of CES, and one of the things that I know from just having been there many times is, there's bigness. There's companies that do huge booths where they've got like walls of TV displays. LG, I know last year did like they announced like their TV screen that you could roll up like a poster. Google did a crazy booth where they had like a slide that went into, I think, like a ball pit or something like that. It was just like insane stuff. This is off the charts crazy types of experiences that most of these brands are investing really all year planning for, and they announce amazing things too. This is an example here we're looking at of an electric car concept, and so people think, oh, the car concepts go to the auto show and the mobile world concepts go to mobile world, but like really CES brings all of these things together, and everyone announces everything all in this one place. And it's I just have to share one of the things that was most interesting for me is I remember going to CES one year, and this was maybe 10 years ago, where I saw a concept home where they had all the counters and they had these wireless charging plates. And at that point, it was like, wow, you could just put a device down and it would just charge. That was crazy. And that was 10 years ago. And then you see it like 3 or 4 years later, we can buy wireless chargers and it's all in the market. And like, so you really do get a glimpse of like the technology that's going to come before it even happens. And I wonder if you could just share so much of what my experience has been at CES and what many attendees' experience has been at CES is experiential. It's touching things, it's looking at things, it's in some cases feeling things, which is really tough to recreate. So how did you think about that challenge when it came to moving digital with CES?
Well, like you said, CES in a regular season, when we can convene in person in Las Vegas, it's big and there's so many cool things, and it's impossible to recreate all that magic and serendipity. We really looked at this. We looked at examples from the music industry, from sports. How are they engaging with their audiences in this season? And CES, even though it's all digital, it's still going to be big. We started out early last year with a goal. When we started down the production path for the all digital CES 2021, we had a goal of 1,000 exhibitors. Well, I'm pleased to say that attendees next week will get to experience 1,800 plus exhibitors. Registrations have been, the tally just increases every day, almost like as we trended towards the end of the year, almost a logarithmic increase. But we're comfortably in the 6 figures. The response from the global tech community has been phenomenal, just really exceeding our goals, our expectations. And I think part of the reason for that is that experiential platform. One of the things I think everyone would agree with me on in this season when it comes to digital events is that it's been great. It's allowed us to at least connect and so forth and maybe get some business done. But in a lot of these events, they've been dimensionally flat, meaning that there's not a lot of networking. It's very difficult to connect one-on-one. Not true with the all digital CES. And what I mean by that is it's going to be personalized. So you can set up your profile. So the show will actually be tailored to your preferences but more, you can message other attendees. You can set up meetings with other attendees, and obviously you can set up meetings with exhibitors and request those. There'll be interactive chats and a lot of video content, of course, with the all digital platform. But so many different ways to experience the show with full acknowledgement. We crave that 5 cents experience in Las Vegas each and every year. But I think the all digital CES is going to get us pretty close to at least in interacting with other attendees, interacting with brands. And I can't wait to see everything next week.
Yeah, so I mean, let's dig into you're a research guy, you're a numbers guy. Let's talk about some of the numbers. I mean, typically for a usual year of CES in person, you'd have what, 100,000 people registered, 110,000, something like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, registration is well north of 200,000, and actual attendance at the show is somewhere between 150 to upwards. I think our record was somewhere around the 180,000 figure.
And how does that compare to what you're expecting to happen this year?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, it's almost been a logarithmic increase as we approach the end of the year and into the new year. So let's see. Like I can say, I said before, we're comfortably in the 6 figures for registrations, and more are pouring in every day. The response from the global tech community has been phenomenal. I think people acknowledge CES. They look to CES each and every year to really set the pace for innovation, write a new chapter across so many different trends. And like you said, get a glimpse of future technologies. Of course, yes, let's talk about today's market opportunities, but let's look ahead to the future. And this is really what CES, that's the spirit of CES. Each year we look for organic innovation. We'll tick that box for sure. We also look for applications of existing technologies to new use cases. I'm expecting a lot of that. We've seen a lot of that in this season, thinking about different technologies to help consumers and healthcare professionals, others cope with the crisis. But then also there are always those surprise whoa moments, like I did not expect to see that. This is crazy. Maybe it's a product or a device. Maybe it's at a partnership announcement. I would have never expected these two brands to come together. All that's going to be in play next week at the All Digital CES.
Yeah, and let's talk. I'm curious. So we're going to jump into some of the tech trends in just a second. But before we do that, I am curious, as you think about, I think you mentioned there's 1,800 exhibitors. When an exhibitor signs on and they are creating a booth of some sort, what does that mean? Like, what is a booth in the virtual version of CES? And maybe, I don't know if you've gotten a glimpse of any of the digital experiences, but is there anything that looks like kind of a standout way of using technology, something that you're looking at, or that the media is already starting to look at and say, wow, they're just really doing something really interesting?
Well, the All Digital CES is really congruent with a broadcast event. We've got over 100 hours of programming. And from an exhibit standpoint, I think what attendees can expect is a lot of rich media content. Obviously, brands want to put their best foot forward, if you like, on this all digital platform. And as I mentioned, there'll be interactive features. So not just static videos that you can just click and watch, but actually the ability to ask brands different questions, request earnest meetings that can happen via Microsoft Teams within the platform. So no breaking away and having to kind of go off-site. You can do all this within the platform. So there's, again, it's going to be an experiential show, very akin to a broadcast event across 4 days. And there's just going to be so much to see. I mean, as usual at CES, it's hard to see everything. We have to make some tough choices, don't we, when we attend CES in Las Vegas? And that's why with the All Digital CES, we built in tools so attendees can personalize that experience. And that's going to be really important. So if you're interested in just automotive and vehicle tech, a lot of that content will be curated for you and you'll be directed. So we're accustomed to walking the floor at CES, but we wanted to kind of avoid having to click around too much on the virtual platform. So this element of personalization is going to be really key. And I would just encourage anyone planning to attend next week, if you haven't already set up your profile, which is kind of step one, to go ahead and do that and just select those areas of the industry that you're really interested to lean into.
So once again, if you aren't registered and you do want to register, ces.tech is the website to go and register. But many of the sessions, well, maybe not many, but some of the sessions that companies are doing are kind of freely going to be streamed as well, in terms of like big announcements and things from large electronics brands. And I wonder if some of them have already actually happened. And that'll kind of lead us to what I'd like to talk about right now, which is trends. What are we seeing? What are people watching? What are you seeing coming out? And what should we be thinking about? What should we be excited about? I mean, what trends are you seeing right now? Can you give us a little sneak peek?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, last year at CES 2020, I described a new IoT, the intelligence of things, as really defining innovation in this decade. And I think what we've seen over the course of last year, certainly, and the health crisis was a supreme catalyst for this, it was just a massive acceleration of that dynamic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've seen manifold applications of artificial intelligence. Of course, the intelligence of things bears testimony that we're adding intelligence to just about everything we're doing. And that's across the entire economy, not just within devices or consumer tech. But really, we're seeing a lot more increase, a big increase in machine learning applications, deep learning applications. A lot of this has been taking place in medicine as we try to hack the problem of the crisis and cope with this and treat that, but also a lot of robotic process automation. A lot of people think that immediately means robots that are flooding onto the factory floor. Not necessarily. It's really, the key word is process. So a lot of process automation. Why do we need that? Well, ostensibly we've got less workers in the office, or maybe less workers on the factory floor. We need to automate some processes. Natural language processing is another trend that's powered by the intelligence of things, AI, that is allowing, of course, digital assistants, but also in this season of buying everything virtually and online, with customer service and so forth. And last but not least, cloud. There's been this rush to the cloud for a range of reasons. We need data to support our business or our customers in this online season. So that intelligence of things, this acceleration of that, I think is kind of the strategic theme. But another significant trend we're going to see is 5G. And you may be surprised to know that there are about 135 commercial 5G networks up and running around the world. I mean, that's a huge number, and we're still in the kind of early stages.
I am surprised by that, actually. That number seems really high.
Yeah, and we're going to, and like we do every year at CES, we'll write a new chapter for so many trends, including 5G. And it's going to start Monday night with a great keynote from Hans Vestberg, who is chairman and CEO of Verizon, obviously, to talk about 5G as the framework for the 21st century. We'll hear about the growth of, obviously, Verizon's network, but also how these networks are beginning to evolve. And what's very interesting here in 2021 is that we're starting to get up to that point, along with some of the 3GPP standards activities that are happening in the background, to where we're going to push beyond just enhanced mobile broadband, faster speeds on our smartphones. We endorse that, of course, but we're going to start to push into more industrial IoT applications. And that's where 5G starts to really fan out and really underpin the entire global economy. It's one of these key ingredient technologies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love that, because sometimes it's and I know for some of the people watching, just if we sat here talking about 5G for 5 minutes, they would just like it's like super enterprise deep tech type of stuff. But what's really powerful about the way you think about these technologies and the way they're introduced at a place like CES is the application of those is something that we see roll out over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And what's fascinating to me about being there, whether it's virtual or in person at a show like CES, is that you get to have this real preview of something that's going to be really impactful. I mean, I remember seeing drones 5 years before they were kind of more widespread, that you could just literally go to Walmart and buy one. And before they were super expensive things, and they were kind of flying on top of delivery trucks and just like really interesting applications. And I wonder, for somebody who is tech curious, shall we say, the personalization that you mentioned sounds great to help people find what they work in, but there's a downside to that too, right? Because one of the beautiful things about CES is that you walk through, like if I don't work in automotive, I could still walk through the automotive showcase and at least spend like 20 minutes just kind of seeing what's there. And that's really hard to do in a digital sense. And I wonder if that, as you thought about the experience, as your team thought about the experience, was there any thought to how do we still let people have these serendipitous moments where they might kind of see something that's not their field, but that might lead them towards something interesting, something in my lingo of non-obvious, just by going outside of their comfort zone, right?
Well, sure. And I think to put it another way, personalization, what we're really talking about is prioritization. So these are the chief things that I want to look at. And yes, we fully expect people will investigate different brands. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of brands that are very familiar to attendees, and they're like, yeah, I want to see what this brand is doing or that brand is doing. A lot of people are interested in big screen TVs. That's a perennial favorite at CES. So maybe that's not your sector, but from a professional standpoint,
it's sexy. For
yeah,
sure.
it's sexy.
Yeah.
It's cool. So I think people are just going to really get in there. They're going to click through. They're going to spend a great deal of time. And one thing that's important to mention is that, yeah, I mean, there's the show hours are the show hours. It's about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's when we'll have all the content rolling out and the virtual show floor will be open. But all that content will be accessible to attendees right on through the middle part of February. So if they missed a conference session, which is with the All Digital CES, these more than 100 conference sessions that we have, that's going to be the principal way we take in those contextual stories, that perspective from different business and industry leaders. So all those sessions will be preserved, and people can go back if they missed one, or if they just didn't have time to look at all the ones that they want, they'll be able to go back and do that. So I think, yeah, there's going to be that element of discovery, those aha moments. Wow, I didn't expect to see that. And that's just what CES is all about. And I think we've captured that with the All Digital CES.
Now, one of my favorite parts of CES also is your team does a lot of curation of like the best of. There's like awards given to the most innovative technologies. There's products selected. When does that happen? Has that already happened, or is that going to happen?
Yeah, so that is the Innovation Awards program, and absolutely, it's been happening. we have entries in the fall timeframe, and of course our panel of judges weigh in on these. And yes, so the Innovations Awards will be visible, both honorees and then Best of Innovations, which are really the winner in different product categories. And there are over 24 of these product categories. So,
and when do those happen? Because I think that's one of those moments where people really pay attention to, like, hey, what's the hottest thing? Like, what's the coolest thing?
Well, sure, and that's another aspect of the All Digital CES that attendees can lean into and can investigate and click through all those Best of Innovations and honoree winners. That'll be accessible on the platform.
And does that happen next week, in the middle of the week or something like that? Is that kind of the time frame for it? Because I'm just wondering if you have any previews of that, of kind of game-changing technology or anything like that we're going to start seeing. Because, for people who don't know about the media window for CES, like, this is right at the beginning, but like starting next week, you're going to see a ton of articles, news reports, broadcast media. I mean, everybody's going to be talking about like what got announced at CES, what are the cool things. It'll be some crazy technologies, it'll be some interesting technologies, different types of screens for sure, foldable phones. I mean, who knows what's going to be announced, right? So I'm just wondering if you have any sense of what those things will be, or if it's too early right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the debut of the Innovation Award winners and honorees will happen the first day of the show, Monday, January 11th, which is Media Day. And we reserved that day for the media. And so clearly, we want a lot of coverage. So I think that's where it really will start. But then, of course, attendees will be able to engage with that space. And I don't want to spoil it for people, but that's definitely something to check out, because that's where we find a lot of, it's the best of innovations. That's where we find the cutting edge products.
Mm-hmm.
And you nailed it. I mean, it really runs the gamut over 24 product categories. So from TVs and gaming monitors right through really innovative healthcare devices. Digital health is a, and again, I know it's the non-obvious insights show, but that's an obvious one in this season where we're going to see a lot of innovation.
Innovation in healthcare. Yep.
Medical devices to support telemedicine, sanitization robots, really robotics. What's very interesting, because we look for different nuances for across themes and trends each and every year, and as you said before, these trends tend to evolve over a long time series. What's interesting, I think, at the All Digital CES 2021 is that we'll see basically the genres, if you like, of robotics and self-driving vehicles really kind of combine into just a broader ecosystem of autonomous systems that we've seen deployed, like where I live in city of Fairfax. We have these Starship robots that are delivering food and groceries. They look like a little cooler on 6 wheels, and they're just motoring down the sidewalk. And we've seen other applications. I mean, drones are starting to deliver food and medicine, packaged goods, and notably the FAA just put forward some rules and regulations allowing that to continue even after post-crisis. So there's going to be a lot. I mean, we could spend hours, as you know, talking about these trends, but the best of innovations will be a great way to just kind of have a nice flyover of what is really the cream of the crop when it comes to devices at CES 2021.
So there's a ton of things to look forward to. I love the moment in time that CES represents every year, because it's the start of a new year. It's lots of technology coming, and it really, it helps us look towards the future. And what I appreciate about a show like this and about our conversation as well is that it looks at technology and advancements not with fear and dread, but with hope and optimism. And I think that's important, because ultimately these technologies are being created by people, and the more human we can make them. I always tell people the most dangerous thing we could do is to have the machines not appreciate humanity. Like, we should be reading bedtime stories to robots. Like, why wouldn't we? Because we want them to be appreciating humans. Because what is the storyline you see in every disastrous science fiction movie? The robots don't appreciate humans. They look at Earth and say, well, better without us, and we're toast. So that's not what we want. We want human tech, and I just love that so much of the innovation we see every year coming from CES is in that category. So I just want to say, thank you for giving us a little bit of a preview. There's lots to look forward to next week, so I'm definitely registered. I'll be there watching, looking at the Innovation Award winners, probably writing about them as well as part of the media. And I'm just really, really excited about the show. And I'm excited about what comes next, because we briefly mentioned this, but you're already thinking about 2022 and what's going to happen there. So give us, in the last minute that we've got here, give us just a little bit of an inside look at the conversation for, I know CES 2021 hasn't even happened yet, but I know you're also always looking forward. So, give us a little peek inside what might be in store for 2022.
Well, it's true. As soon as one CES wraps up, we immediately start planning for the next one. And I'm pleased to say that yes, we are planning for an in-person event in 2022. But let me go on to say that we'll also preserve the all digital format. So what I'm saying is you can expect really a hybrid event. If everything goes to plan, of course, with full acknowledgement that we're still dealing with a lot of uncertainty as it pertains to the crisis. But we fully intend to have an in-person event in Las Vegas, as we normally would, that will be complemented with an all-digital venue and format. And I think there'll be unique benefits to both sides of that equation. But those are our plans at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Steve Koenig from the Consumer Technology Association, CTA, part of the CES team. CES is coming next week. Again, if you haven't registered, ces.tech to register. If you want to know what's coming in the future, that's the place to go. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks for having me on the show today.
You're welcome. Thanks to all of you for being part of the show this week. We have lots of amazing guests coming for the rest of the month. This is events month too, so there's many big events coming. We've got our own huge event coming on January 26th, which we've started talking about in a little bit of a limited preview, but it has been exploding. The Non-Obvious Beyond Diversity Summit. We've got more than 100 speakers coming there, and it's all free. So if you are not registered for this particular event, you definitely should be there. The Non-Obvious Diversity Summit. It is available right now, nonobviousdiversity.com. So I hope to see you there. I will see you again next Thursday for another edition of the Non-Obvious Insights Show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you are thinking about and doing to be a new innovator and a non-obvious thinker in the new year. I appreciate you, and always stay non-obvious.